think, act, and prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Money Level Show where we think, act, and prosper. Today, I got the green chicken back. The green chicken has been warning us. The green chicken has been giving us the contrary perspective, contrary to popular opinion, perspective of things that we should be aware of and everything. So I'm happy to bring back on Doomberg. How you doing today?
Daryl, I'm doing great. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. You actually caught me at the rat race right now. I guess at the chicken race. I guess I'll call it the chicken race. You caught me at the job. So,
Yeah.
Which is good. I like to just be transparent and I'm trying to help average people. Just how do we make it, protect ourselves and build wealth, prosper and prepare, all those things. So.
Yeah, no, and I thank you for your scheduling flexibility. We were supposed to record this yesterday, but as you know, we're relocating ourselves, and so it's just been a busy week. But worked hard to try to fit it in, and glad we could accommodate this time together.
Yes, for sure. So I recently subscribed to the Substack. It took me a while to do it. Then I was like, I need to go subscribe. So I've been catching up on a lot of the articles. And today, I was actually reading today the new one that just came out, Untying Tether. About Celsius and the bankruptcy and everything. And it's very intricate, the process, but like I can just see like how people can get screwed over in this whole thing.
You want to dive into that a little bit?
Let's dive into that. What's the risk for like the people that have their money like locked into that? I've seen like the tweets, I've seen the anger, at Alex Mashinsky and Celsius, especially on Twitter. What are the risks right now?
Yeah, so Celsius was operating as essentially an unregulated bank. And Alex Mashinsky, the CEO of Celsius, as you know, is a very promotional guy, right? And, the old adage in life is if something is too good to be true, it's probably not true. And so what he was doing was taking crypto deposits, paying people a yield for those deposits, and then lending money or lending crypto in the same way that a bank would, but also making investments into various DeFi projects and so on. And in order to grab as many deposits as he could, he was offering, abnormally high yields, as much as 17% APR. And you and I both know that that's just, that screams Ponzi, right? I mean, like in the grand history of unregulated banks, A, they all fail, and B, they all gain deposits by offering too good to be true yields. And this time was no different. And the thrust of the piece is that Celsius was forced to file for bankruptcy. And bankruptcy court is a whole different animal than AMA spaces and, YouTube live streams and so on. And so, and we found out a lot of very interesting and troubling things in the Celsius bankruptcy filing. The first thing we found out, which is quite shocking, is that Celsius had pledged an enormous amount of collateral of its customers' crypto deposits, basically, for a loan. And they received that loan, but they had pledged way more collateral. And of course, as crypto was going up in price, the value of that collateral was going up. And so Celsius tried to pay back that loan, only to find out that the entity that they took the loan from defaulted on their collateral. They wouldn't give the collateral back. They didn't have it. And so a year ago, Mashinsky learned that he had a $500 million hole in his balance sheet. He was effectively insolvent a year ago, and yet he still went on to go on all of these Twitter spaces and YouTube live streams and bragging about the banking revolution he was leading and how safe the Celsius ecosystem was, and promising people all of these yields when he knew that he had a $500 million hole in his balance sheet. So that was the first really explosive revelation that came out of that filing. And the second one was that Tether actually lent Celsius tethers, 840 million worth at least, in exchange for Bitcoin as collateral. And we have always been led to believe that tethers are backed, 1-for-1 with US dollars or safe short-term, treasuries or commercial paper equivalents. And here we learn that, basically $1 billion worth of tether were created backed by nothing but Bitcoin. And so then you could take that tether and buy more Bitcoin and drive up the price of Bitcoin, and kind of like we called it a digital token perpetual motion machine. It's just, I have Bitcoin, I pledge it, I get tether, I buy more Bitcoin, I pledge that, I get Bitcoin, I get tether, I buy more Bitcoin, sort of a do loop. And that works great on the way up, but on the way down, it unwinds pretty quickly. And that's kind of what we talked a lot about in the piece. But the real challenge for Tether is they unwound that loan with Celsius within the 90-day window before Celsius filed for bankruptcy, which means Tether is going to be under the gun in bankruptcy court and will have a lot of scrutiny that it probably would otherwise wish it didn't have.
Mm. Yeah, that's very concerning, and I know, like, in the crypto space, obviously you and your team have dove deep into this. There is a lot of questions on how these things are backed. I know that USDC, they have treasuries and such, and there's a certain percentage they have, and then I know Tether seems like the riskiest of them all, not being backed by as much treasuries or dollars. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, the big mystery with Tether and the red flags, shall we say, is that they refuse to submit themselves to an audit. So to Circle's credit, who operates the stablecoin USDC, they recently published a full list of all of their assets with QSIP numbers, like all money market funds have to do. Your Fidelity money market funds, if you have cash at a trading brokerage account, you're almost certainly sweeping it into, quote unquote, a money market fund, which gets you a little bit of interest, but it's basically the same as money. And one of the reasons why it's basically the same as money is all of those operators of money market funds list what they're putting your money in every day, and you can see it. Circle just did that. Tether has never come close to doing that. Quite the reverse. They've done everything they can to obfuscate the nature of their reserves that are backing the tethers that they've issued. And then, since 70% of the Bitcoin transactions actually are settled in Tether, if there isn't actually dollars backing these tethers, then it's basically a counterfeiting operation. And then what does the price of Bitcoin really mean? And so this example, which again exploded off the pages in the bankruptcy filing that Celsius had to do in Delaware, because you have $5 billion of nominal value of customer deposits locked up in this bankruptcy now. So if you put money with Celsius hoping to get that sweet 17% yield, now your money is locked. You don't know how much you're going to get back, and you don't know when you're going to get it back, if you get it back at all. They'll probably get most of it back over time, but the pain and the liquidity crisis that's going to put some people, especially if they put most of their life savings into it, and many people did. My main message to your listeners would be, if it seems too good to be true, don't do it. And whatever you do, don't put 100% of your life savings into any one thing, let alone something that seems too good to be true. If you get that little impulse of sort of greed and exhilaration around getting rich quick, almost certainly going to end poorly. Don't do it.
Yeah, for sure. We're not gamblers. We try to be very conservative and smart with our investments. And Celsius was offering 18%, and I get these DMs on Twitter. It's like these fake accounts. They'll follow me. They're like, Asian women or something. I don't know where they stealing the pictures from. I don't know if they're stock photos or what. But then they'll message me, hey, you invest in crypto? Yeah, I dabble in Bitcoin. Oh, well, how much are you earning? I'm earning $1,000 a day off Ethereum. And it just sounds way too good to be true. And I was like, this has got to be a scam. So then, I go and look on YouTube, and I see someone that actually fell for the scam, and listening to their story and how they fell for the scam, and then seeing these other Twitter profiles saying like, hey, why you scam me and everything. So if it's too good to be true, like, you really should go the other way, other direction.
And if you get a random DM from an Asian woman account, it's probably not going to be who you think it is on the other side of the DM. As you can imagine, we get dozens of those a day, and it's a very quick delete for us.
Yeah, for sure. And so with this whole untying of Tether, it kind of makes me think about the SEC. So I was recently, I don't know if you're familiar with Joseph Wang. That used to work at the Fed, but he talked about how he believes more, regulation will happen in the crypto space at some point. And I can just see how this can unfold, and many people lose their life savings that invested their life savings, and then if this whole thing blows up, how the SEC and the government's gonna really crack down on the off ramps, or the banks or whatnot, and exchanges. How do you foresee that kind of compounding on top of the bankruptcy? And I mean, it could be bad.
Yeah, I would say this: if you're looking towards the SEC to protect you in advance and to stop fraud from happening in real time, that's a foolish thing to hope for. The old expression, of course, is that the regulators are make for better archaeologists than they do detectives. They're not crime preventers. They come after the fact, and if there's enough outrage and enough retail losses, then they will put a few people in jail and try to make people feel good that way. By definition, you don't want to be the reason why the SEC has intervened, because that means you've lost a lot of money and they feel sorry for you. Much better to avoid the loss and have somebody else take your place than to be the reason why the SEC intervened in anything, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, for sure. And I've been seeing a lot of these stories on, I think it's a Twitter profile called Coinfessions or whatnot. It's been pretty interesting reading some of those snippets of what people have risked and everything. So transitioning to energy, I've been doing a lot more research on just the lack of investment into our energy infrastructure, our supply, and everything. I mean, right now the price of crude is going down, but I believe that it's going to go back up because of the lack of investment. And then we recently had the Inflation Reduction Act that was drafted by I think Manchin and Schumer. And in that act, there's nothing about bringing more supply on with oil or natural gas or anything like that. It's mostly just about these the clean energy or whatnot. And so I just wanted to get your take on how's this going to look like with the inflation that we've seen in energy and this continuous lack of investment, and ignoring the supply the supply deficits that we currently have.
So there's some good things in the bill. And by the way, the bill is not yet passed. And there's a little bit of consternation about a few holdouts on the Democratic side looking for, a few of the changes on tax policy and stuff. And we'll see how it plays out. There, at least on its face, nobody's seen the bill, which is, of course, one of the biggest challenges with, the American Congress, is that all this stuff gets worked out behind the scenes, and the people voting on it don't get to read it before they have to vote. And certainly the public doesn't get to read it in time to express their pleasure or displeasure on these things. And next thing you know, economy shaping policies have been passed in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and you wake up the next morning and you have to deal with this new reality, which is really shameful, to be honest with you. This type of stuff, this shouldn't be done behind closed doors with smoke-filled rooms, to use an old metaphor. But that's the politics that we have today. There's some good stuff in there for nuclear. There's some good stuff in there in theory, for accelerating the approval of certain critical natural gas pipeline type projects. We'll see if they survive in the final bill. And there's a fair amount of sort of grift and waste in the sort of ESG side as well, which is to be expected. So we shall see if it passes or not. I mean, it's really hard to give an intelligent opinion on it. I haven't seen the bill. Won't be allowed to see the bill before it's handed to us as a fait accompli. And so what can you say? This is American sausage making at its finest, and we'll see if it gets passed, and then we'll have to consume it once it is passed and see what the consequences will be.
Yeah, and and I'm also referring to the sentiment around the the oil producers and such, and just it seems like there was issues with leasing on federal land. Biden and oil producers going back and forth and such. And so I'm just kind of wondering, okay, well, it seems like this sentiment around, the current energy sources that we mostly consume today isn't good. And it's not really promoting bringing more of that supply online.
Yeah, I don't think the real game is here. I think the real game is over in Europe and how they're going to get ready for the upcoming winter in Germany in particular, Western Europe in general. The resolution of the natural gas crisis in Europe, we think, is the single greatest geopolitical event in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Whether or not they, cut a deal with Putin, or whether we have peace in Ukraine, which, God willing, we do. That's where the real action is. Whether oil is at $90 a barrel where it is today or 110 doesn't really matter to us. Doesn't really impact the average consumer. $4 or $4.50 a gallon. Gasoline at the pump is it's all expensive. It's probably not prohibitive for most of your listeners. The real action is going to be in Europe. And we'll see what Germany does vis-a-vis Putin and the war in Ukraine, and whether they can hold out. As much as prices have come down here, looking just at oil, prices have not come down in Europe. If you're looking at natural gas, which is it's way more important in many ways than oil, because natural gas is used to make electricity, it's used to heat people's homes, and it's used to make chemicals like fertilizer. And the price of natural gas in Europe today is $58 a million BTU, and in the US it's only $8 per million BTU. And these people have to live with that huge arbitrage. It's such a critical input into the economy that it gives American manufacturers an enormous advantage. It cripples European manufacturing. The size of the upcoming recession, the depth of that recession is totally not appreciated yet. It is inevitable. 1 year ahead, electricity prices in Germany topped out at 400 euros per megawatt hour. And just to give you a benchmark, a year ago they were 50. How do you have 8 to 10 times higher electricity prices? 8 to 10 times, Daryl. Like, how can an economy absorb that and remain competitive on a global scale? And the answer is it can't. And so nobody's modeling the depth of the recession that's coming in Western Europe as a consequence of these energy policy failures. So that's where we think the action is. Whether gas in the US is $4 or $5 is interesting. It's not particularly compelling from a geopolitical perspective, because there are many, many people in the world of similar sort of societal standard of living that are dealing with far greater crises than the electoral consequences of elevated gas prices in the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I was looking at there's been some talk about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. I know we've been draining that a lot. And then I know you've tweeted out a few charts regarding that. So is there anything going on with that? Like, as far as, I think they decided to stop releasing from the reserve in the fall or something like that.
That's the current plan. They're still going full steam ahead. And in fact, if they hadn't done that, the price of oil would be substantially higher than it is today. They're cranking it out right now. I just saw another 5 million barrels last week or something on the drawdown. Just pulling up the chart as we talk. Yeah, it's down to, geez, it must be down in a 1 year time period. I mean, it's down, looks like probably 25%, and this Strategic Petroleum Reserve is meant to be used in time of war. And last I checked, we don't have a declared war, with Germany. So we're down, looks like from 650 million barrels a day, 650 million barrels in the reserve down to 470 million barrels in the reserve in the past 2 years, most of which has come in the past 8 months, let's say. So we'll see if they stop this weekly release of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We're going to see oil prices jump back up. If they continue, you might see oil prices fall. But it is really remarkable that we've resorted to such political means. We jokingly call it on Twitter when we post those charts that you referenced. We call it the Strategic Political Reserve, because it is allowing Biden to artificially lower the price of gasoline compared to where it would be if the market forces were allowed to work themselves out.
Yes, it's interesting how they're going to stop the releasing the reserves, and I think it's October or something, around midterm elections around that time.
Just in time, yeah.
Yeah.
Now you know why we call it the Strategic Political Reserves, yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So just kind of thinking about, like, Germany, obviously, the SPR is used for, times of war or whatnot. I mean, we saw Russia come in and I believe they cut Nord Stream 1 down to 20%. And we're, currently we're probably going to see the effects of that on Germany coming up this winter. Do you have any take on, what's happening with this China-Taiwan thing? I know Nancy Pelosi just recently visited there, and there's been some, videos kind of surfacing of like, China doing military exercises, on I think it's the Strait border between the two countries or whatnot. Have you looked into that much?
Yeah, to be totally honest with you, this is one that we can't quite figure out. I mean, so on its face, Nancy Pelosi randomly deciding to go to Taiwan would seem to be an unnecessary provocation to a already tense situation. And I have no explanation for it. And as a general rule, when something is so far out of what we think should be done, and we have no explanation for it, we just assume we must be missing some critical piece of information. Some behind the scenes action that makes everything make sense. As a general rule, our politicians are not dumb, and they have an acute awareness of what they're doing and why. And so when something seems so outside of what we thought should be done, and we can't really understand what's going on, we just fall back to the assumption that, okay, there must be something big going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of. And that's basically where we land here. We've tweeted about it. We haven't taken a firm position on it. And it's funny because when you try to tweet neutrally on Twitter, you get comments against you from both sides because they project what they think you must be meaning when you tweet. It's just an interesting social experiment. I don't have a strong opinion. Obviously, we're pro-Taiwanese independence. We're anti-Chinese Communist Party. We're pro-American. We consider ourselves patriotic citizens of the U.S. and blessed and lucky to be living here. And so we would like for the U.S. to have its geopolitical objectives met. And to the extent that Pelosi and Biden felt that going to China now, while we're already entangled with Russia and Ukraine, and opening up a second front in confrontation was prudent, I hope there's a good basis for it. I can't find one.
Yeah, definitely. So do you have any, just to kind of close us out, do you have any predictions or kind of what are you thinking may happen in this midterm election? Are we more doomed, or what's kind of your feelings on the midterm elections coming up?
The analogy I would use is when Bill Clinton was elected, first term, and 2 years in, he suffered a wipeout in the midterms. And this was, contract with America and Newt Gingrich. And as a general rule, we're big fans of divided government because either useful compromise gets done or nothing gets done. And we're all for that. And so if the polls are any indication, it looks like the Republicans will probably take back the House and a decent control of the Senate, which then forces the Biden administration to compromise and for bipartisanship to flourish. That'll probably anger, extremists on both sides to say that. I would argue that the last time the U.S. had a balanced budget was after Newt Gingrich and the contract with America took over the Congress and squared off against Bill Clinton. And you might recall that Bill Clinton's first term, he kind of slipped in running against George Bush and a third-party candidate. And so it kind of split the vote and wasn't really like a traditional election. You had Ross Perot in there as an independent candidate and took a lot of conservative votes against, George Bush Sr. When we had divided government, reasonably good things got done and a lot less dumb things got done. And so our base case is that the Republicans will retake control of Congress. And this will shave the edges off of both sides on the extreme sides of both parties. And for the good of the country, hopefully, a more proactive and productive session in the next Congress is a result.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been pondering as well. Especially, I watched the interview with Neil Howe, who wrote The Fourth Turning, and his prediction is that the Republicans are going to win the midterms or whatnot and have majority. And so yeah, it ways to be seen, but I think that having a more balanced Congress and the powers being balanced will be more helpful for sure.
Yeah.
So.
At a minimum, they'll be able to do less dumb stuff. So we're all for it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Doomberg, I appreciate you for coming on. Everyone, be sure to go subscribe to Doomberg Substack. I will leave that link in the description below. Anything else you want to tell the audience?
No, Daryl's great. Always great to catch up. Looking forward to the next time.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. You take care.
You too.